So you've taken the time to gather all the ingredients together, butter, sugar, eggs and flour, and you've beat the butter and sugar within an inch of its life, and you've folded in the flour beautifully and the eggs are in there and it's all looking like gorgeous, lovely, yummy cake mix. And you've prepared your tin and you've poured it in and you've put it in the oven at just the right temperature, and now it's time to wait. It's time to wait, but you're waiting, and you look across at the recipe book and that wonderfully domed looking result that you're expecting, but you can't wait, so you open the door to check. Cold air rushes in and the cake of your dreams collapses, the dome falls flat, and your cake is not what you expected. So what am I talking about? Well, today is part 1 of 5 blocks to life transformation, how to avoid them. And today we're talking about impatience, because opening the oven too soon is one thing that will certainly not give you the results you're looking for when you are chasing your dreams. So stay tuned and we'll talk all about that. Hit it, Kim.
Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the NPA Process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. This is episode number 50, the big 50. And how amazing is that? I can't believe that back in last October, I think it was, that we did the first ever episode of this podcast. And here we are, weekly editions coming to you. We've reached the big 50. And I've been thinking, what can I do as the big 50? And so I've decided to do a 5-part series, like 1 part for every 10 so far. And funny, because I'm into numerology and stuff. So 50... We've episode 50, 51, 2, 3, 4 for those 5 parts, which will take us up to number 55, which numerologists will tell you is the number for transformation. So how appropriate to be doing 5 blocks to life transformation, how to avoid them over these next 5 episodes. So really, I'm looking at it in terms of how do we block our own journey. So this is really good in terms of if you do your own personal growth, we're going to be covering the main ways that I see that people sort of get in their own way, really. But it's also, these episodes are going to be great if you're a coach or a therapist or a facilitator of some form, because these blocks that we put in our own way and our own journey are also things that I see therapists and coaches all the time putting into the mix when they're facilitating others, which can be just as much of a block. So if you've got clients that aren't getting through their blocks, it's worth checking in with yourself if you're putting these things that we cover in these 5 episodes into the mix. Now, if you're new here, I'm wittering on before saying hello. So hello to you. I'm really delighted that you've found me here on whatever platform you're listening. And if you're back for more, then I always say I love that you're here. I do. I love that you choose to spend half an hour a week with me in your ears. What a fabulous thing. And if you haven't already, make sure you download the NPA sheet, which you can get for free. NPA is a simple way to stop taking things personally. It's a beautiful, easy way to let go of the yucky stuff, let in the yummy stuff of life. And I'm going to be sort of mentioning it throughout these 5 episodes because actually built into the way that I train NPA are all of the answers to all of these things that generally get in our way. In fact, I used to say a lot that NPA was a way to get out of your own way, which is what we're really focusing here on here over these next few episodes. So you can get hold of the NPA sheet. Either you can go to the show notes for today, which will be www.babrillianthuman.com/50, or you can always go to the main website, which is joelyoungnpa.com. That's NPA as in November Papa Alpha, and you can download the NPA sheet for free, absolutely free, and just have a go at it, play with it. I do recommend that you do some training, especially if you're someone who's a coach or a therapist and wants to use it in your practice in some way. If you download the sheet, you can be offered, I'm offering an insane deal on the basic training, and then in a short while I'm going to be releasing the advanced training, which is currently on beta test with a group of people. Awesome stuff. So, and even down the line, we've got plans for practitioners training, and I'll be talking about that sort of getting towards the end of the year. So, but it starts with the NPA process for free. So again, you can go to beabrillianthuman.com/50 or joelyoungnpa.com and grab yourself a copy of that right now. Well, pause it, come back. All right, so over these episodes, basically I'm going to be talking about, what is the block? And I've already given it away today. It's impatience. What is the block? Why is it a block? In other words, why it can stall the progress of transformation, why it can stop you from getting, that shift that you long for. And also we're going to talk a bit about how to navigate around it or avoid it, or in some cases get out of it if you're stuck in it. All right, so let's crack on. We're going to start with impatience. Here we go. Right now, as I'm recording this, we're kind of at the end of 2020, and we've had this whole mad pandemic year. I think a bigger pandemic maybe in our society at this moment is impatience itself. We're sort of in a society that sort of has expectations of everything now. And I think we've forgotten that things take time. It takes time sometimes for things to show up. You plant a seed in the ground and you might not see it or the results of that until next year. But when it comes to transformation, I think there's one of the biggest problems I see that comes up is the transference of that expectation of, you go to YouTube, you click a button and you find your information now. But we forget that our bodies, our minds, and the sort of momentum of our healing sometimes requires time and space for the results of our labors to become obvious or to become manifest. And I used the analogy at the beginning of the episode about, you baking a cake and, you open the oven too soon and the cold air rushes in and your baking flops because you're inviting an interruption to the natural process before it's completed. So what's the consequence of impatience when it comes to the transformation process? Where, maybe you do like the baking the cake thing is like you do maybe some process work or some meditation, and then you want the results immediately rather than waiting for the results to come in their natural time. In the same way there's a process to that cake for all of the ingredients to merge and melt, for the air to heat up and to lift the cake up. In the same way, that's true of our process. So I think when you bring impatience into the mix, there's a natural resistance. And what I mean by that in terms of our transformational approaches, there's a resistance to allowing that natural time and space for things to come. And one of the things that can come out of that is a tendency to poke at it. Like with the cake, another analogy that I could have used, along instead of the cake was, you have a wound and, it gets sewed up or it starts to heal and scabs over and it's irresistible to pick the scab off. But what you end up with is a scar rather than a nicely, beautifully healed patch of skin, because the body's natural time frame hasn't been honored. We see it with convalescence. A big beef for me is like people go into hospital, have a massive operation, they're expected back at work the following day, whereas it wasn't that long ago that the idea of convalescence was perfectly normal. You go to hospital, then you have 6 weeks off work where you stay in bed and you give the body time to heal. There's a time factor involved when it comes to change within our bodies and our minds and our hearts. And So one of the things that can come up within that resistance to doing it, there's the interruptions of the process, but also there's time in there for distraction. So let's say you do a manifestation process, and you have that sense of, or maybe it's a process where you're going to be meditating every day for 30 days. But by the time you get to day 15, impatience has kicked in. Well, I haven't seen any results yet. Maybe it's not working. Maybe I've got the wrong thing. Maybe this, maybe that, because I haven't got the results now as quick as I want them because I am impatient. So what do? You get distracted. You go off and do something else. You think, oh, well, maybe it's not that that's working. Maybe I should try this process, or I should try that process, or I should try this way or that way. And rather than giving, one way of doing it a chance to actually have results, what you end up doing is going elsewhere. And I love that. There's a sort of old Chinese proverb that says, he who chases two hares catches none. And effectively, that's what you're doing. If you're not giving one method a chance to have the time and space to do what it's doing, then you're going to throw another thing into the mix, and that's going to dilute everything. So be careful of impatience bringing on distractions that dilute the whole process. The other thing within impatience is expectations. Now, it's often expectations of time. I should be able to put that cake in the oven and it should be raised within 5 minutes when I'm ready to eat it. I should do that process and then I should manifest £1 million tomorrow. Let it fall out of the sky. So we have these very high expectations in terms of time, which can fuel that impatience. But any kind of expectations, if you look at them, expectations are the death of openness. And I've said on this podcast many times before that, one of the fundamentals of being a brilliant human, one of the fundamentals of non-personal awareness and NPA is having a discovery mindset. Expectations will kill that because you've got something planted in your mind of this is how I want it to be, this is how it's gonna be, rather than going, I wonder what's here now, I wonder what's here now, I wonder if it's ready yet, is different from is it ready yet, is it ready yet, is it ready yet, I want it to be ready, open the door. So I think really we've forgotten the power of waiting. I'm going to say that again. We've forgotten the power of waiting. And we've forgotten the power of stillness. There's tremendous power in just sitting still, waiting. In NPA, I kind of say, do the process, get on with your life, It's like, because I see people do the process, do another process, do another process, do another process, do another process. No, do a process and get on with your life. And the process will do its work. It will do its job. So, in waiting and in stillness, I wrote a blog once. I can't remember the exact name of the blog. I'll probably dig it out and stick it into the show notes, which will be at www.beabrillianthuman.com/50. But the main point of that is I was talking about the power of that waiting, the power of stillness, waiting for yourself to be moved rather than putting that impatient thing, which is to you move things rather than being moved, allowing movement to happen through you. And I said that, speak when words speak you and be quiet when they don't. So it was about communication, and sometimes we rush to fill the silence with words, and they're often empty words and meaningless words, and they're distractions, and it just doesn't help anything. Whereas if you're willing to be in a space of waiting and stillness, then natural movement will come and find you. So when it comes to the process of transformation and life transformation, it's the encouragement here is to remember the power of waiting, remember the power of stillness, because that will be what allows you to discern when that movement is aligned versus when it's impatience sponsoring that premature interruption, which is going to be the death of your dream. Just to be dramatic about it, it will be the death of your dream if you allow impatience to take you over. So I want to talk a bit about how, some of the ways that you can to really approach dealing with impatience. And I'll talk a bit about it in the context of NPA, because as I said, the NPA process and the NPA trainings sort of thread the answers to this one sort of innately within those trainings. So let's have a look at how we deal with this. So you can think of these as kind of 4 mindsets that are going to really help you overcome the impulses to impatience. And the first one is non-attachment to outcome. Now, you probably heard that before. And it sounds simply, but it's really, really key. And I'm going to give you the context. So I talk about it in context of NPA, because these 4 different things are literally threaded through NPA. And even though I'd done loads of other stuff before it came along, and if you're new here, NPA popped out of me in answer to a prayer back in 2007. I'd been working with Brandon Bayes in The Journey for many years before that, teaching that work all over the world, which is a very emotionally focused and sort of in-depth process, really. And when it came along in 2007, it kind of re-educated me on a lot of the meanings of these things that maybe you'd heard before, but hadn't necessarily had the nuances of it. So how NPA taught me non-attachment to outcome was because sometimes you would do a process, and the process for NPA, you'll know when you download the sheet, it's 6 simple lines, so you can do it very quickly. It might, you might do a process in 45 seconds, whereas the journey work that I've been doing before, it might take 3 hours to do a process. And that was really quick compared to, say, psychotherapy or whatever, to change depression or something. But it was super quick. But also I found that sometimes you do the process and it would seem like nothing had happened. Now, most of the time with an NPA process, you're going to get some kind of what I call subjective win. So you're going to experience something like an internal emotional or energetic movement, or you'll get an aha. There'll be something in the mind that says, oh, something's happened, I did it right, okay? But sometimes you'll get none of that. And I found that when people had that experience, it would first of all freak them out because, oh, maybe I've done it wrong, would be the response. But if they just left it, if they had no attachment to what the result immediately after the process was, and they just, let it be, then if they were mindful going forward, they realized that the shifts would just show up in their life. So I've learned to be very unattached to the outcome. When I teach NPA, I say it's not a results-oriented process, and it isn't. The entire job in that, in the process is to just do the words that are there to do, do the process that's there to do and move on. It's none of your business if the result or some kind of evidence of a result is immediate or not. So being, unattached to the outcome will immediately bypass any sense of impatience, because you really get that it's none of your business. And the next one is faith in the non-logical responses from the universe. I love this one. Again, I'd see this all the time when I first started teaching NPA, and people would have all sorts of kind of responses that, again, were not necessarily what their expectations were, but would be even better. And it's fascinating because the NPA process itself doesn't make sense a lot of the time. Sometimes even the grammar within the process doesn't make sense. But when you begin to trust it, when you begin to allow yourself to understand that doesn't matter, that there can be non-logical responses from within the process and within the universe, then, it's something that really helps you to, when you train that idea in, that really helps you just to let go of the expectations, and therefore the impatience of those expectations coming to fruition according to your timeline. So, for example, in NPA, the way it works is there's 6 lines, and there's a space in there that you put in a keyword, or I call it a cookie cutter. And there's a process you go through to find, what is the keyword phrase, or the cookie cutter, as I call it, that goes into that blank. And, in terms of how the expectations may be, how the logical thing might be, well, if I've got depression, I just put depression in there, right? It's obvious. But the way that you find the words that go in there invites a non-logical approach to that, more of an intuitive approach to finding the right words. You might end up with the word that goes into that set of 6 lines, rather than it being depression, it might be something as mad as Ibble I'm a teapot. And you're like, that makes no sense whatsoever. But somewhere deep in your subconscious, somehow Ibble I'm a teapot is linked. You don't have to know. It's not logical. You do the process, and then, things begin to shift. So the ability to have faith in the non-logical response to the universe is a truly powerful mindset to hold. And in terms, again, because impatience comes from a very sort of, it's very mind oriented. Here's my expectations, including my timeline. I want it now, and I want the result to be this specifically. So, and you get that kind of gnawing, chomping at the bit sort of aspect of impatience coming in. The third one is agendalessness, having no agenda in general. Again, in a sense, I've sort of pointed to that in the last 2 points, but having no agenda is so powerful. It's the main reason I say that, if you want to have no resistant clients, if you're a therapist or coach, come and get some NPA training, because having no agenda is baked into how you facilitate with NPA, which of course will inform any other modality that you may use. But again, agendalessness is like the nemesis of impatience. Impatient walks in the room and sees agendaless and goes, "No, I'm dead." So having no agenda literally means you have no agenda. There's literally no expectations. There's an absence. There's a real field of neutrality that sort of washes over you when you have no agenda, which means that the hookiness of impatience can't grip onto you. So going back to the cake analogy, the agenda is, I want it done on my timeline. If you have no agenda, you might look through the door. If it's an oven with a door, you might look through the door and wait. Or perhaps you just wait till, again, going back to speak when words speak, you be quiet when they don't. Wait for the movement, and your natural innate connection to the entire universe will speak to you and say, "Oh, it's time now." So if you think about how like a master chef might cook, they won't necessarily go, "Well, I'll put it in the oven at this point, and it says 25 minutes, so I'm going to leave it for 25 minutes. They're going to have that sort of intuitive nudge, maybe a minute before, maybe a minute after. They're going to look at it and go, "It's not quite done yet." And they get that from having no agenda in terms of time specifics, but they just go, "Okay, now's the time. I'm being moved now." I'm not going to judge whether it seems sooner than I think or later than I think. It's like my gut says now. And they got no agenda about it. So having no agenda really frees up your intuitive faculties enormously, and will certainly transcend those hooks around impatience. And I say certainly within the advanced training of NPA, there's a whole section on agendalessness. In fact, I bang on so much about agendalessness throughout all of the trainings. It's like really is so key to the non-personal philosophy in general. And what's the final one? Well, the final one is that sort of sense of handing over the power. So that's where I said, do the process, get on with your life. So if you're, again, we're going to go back to that. I'm really cooking on this baking analogy. So it's like when you open the door to check, you are not trusting the process of the cake ingredients, the heat and the environment that's been set up to do its job. You're putting yourself in the way. You haven't handed the power over to the ingredients, the cooker, the oven, and those things. You want to get in there and have a part to play where it's, again, none of your business. Again, we do that in terms of our life transformation processes, because the idea of just stepping back and trusting and letting the universe take its course can be really tricky. So again, generally those things go hand in hand. If you've got impatience, it will try and push you to get involved prematurely, or to do something, go into that distraction mode of trying to find some other method to force it before it's time. But if you really, really step into the idea of, Again, with NPA, I say do the process, get on with your life. You might do 6 simple lines. It makes no sense. Now just go about your business. And because the NPA process specifically, I mean, I think this is generally true of most modalities that work in terms of inner growth and personal transformation, is the process itself actually sets things up in motion. It basically sets the oven to the right temperature, mixes the ingredients, and shoves it in the oven. But so then it's like trusting that then it will do the work. Now in NPA that can be a challenge because it might take you 17 seconds. The process like, that's it, that's too easy. I often say, the most difficult thing about NPA is letting it be as easy as it is. But that's a big part of the picture of that, is that you just do the simple process and move on and trust that you have planted that seed. You've put the cake in the oven and it will do its thing. Nature will take its natural course. So we've got the 4 ways: non-attachment to outcome. Don't be results focused. Just whatever the thing is that you're doing for your life transformation, have an exploratory mindset. Have faith in the non-logical responses from the universe. The universe may respond very differently. Often a process will take you to the next natural step. I've certainly found this over the many years with NPA, is that it might be that, if you have an expectation that you'll do this process and then you'll be healed, whereas actually many of the different ways that you can work internally will just show you the next natural step. So, and it might not seem logical, So trust in the illogical response from the universe. They will get you there. Have no agenda. Agendalessness in general is a powerful antidote. In fact, it's a nuclear antidote to impatience. And then finally, handing over the power. So handing it over, you doing whatever the intervention or the transformational work that you do, and just get on with your life. Really, this all comes down to remembering the power of waiting and remembering the power of stillness. All right. That's the end of part 1. That's the first of our 5 blocks to life transformation and how to avoid them. So make sure you have hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when part 2 comes out. Remember to check out the back catalogue. You can always go to the main website, www.BABrilliantHuman.com, and check out all the previous 50 episodes, or 49 plus this one. And make sure you download the NPA sheet. Again, you can go to the show notes for today, www.beabrillianthuman.com/50, or go to joelyoungmpa.com. And when you do download the sheet, and I do recommend, especially if you work with other people, that you start off with the initial basic training, and there's a great deal to be had there on that page. So thanks so much for listening. You can always get in touch with me. I'd love your feedback. If you would like to leave me a review, I'd be delighted, and let me know if you do leave me a review so I know it's there. You can just hit me up on social media. I'm generally at Joel Young MPA on things like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. If you're a YouTuber, these do go up onto YouTube, and you can leave a comment underneath to say hi to me, and or again, let me know, because if you do leave a review, I want to acknowledge it. I want to get back to you and say thank you for that. And also, if you can message me, if you go to the BeABrilliantHuman.com website, you can hit the button and leave me a voice message. I'm always open to your questions, your feedback, that kind of thing. And of course, you can hit me up at joel@nonpersonalawareness.com if you want to send me an email. Next week, we're going to hit part 2. Part 2 is all about spiritual dogma as an avoidance. Avoidance? Don't hit me up about that, please. I've corrected it already. Have a fabulous week. I will see you next time. Make sure you hit that subscribe. And if you like what you hear, go and tell someone about this show. Big love to you all, and I'll see you next time. Oh, I almost forgot. Cue the moo.